Folks, welcome into That Betting Show at sportsbookreview.com. He's Teddy Sferansky. Give him a follow at Teddy_covers. I'm Donnie Seymour. Give me a follow at RightSideDP. This is That Betting Show, January 14th, 2019. Your one-stop shop for all your sports betting needs. The fastest 20 minutes in sports betting. Teddy, let's get right to it. A huge divisional round weekend. Now, were the games all of that exciting? Probably no, outside of that Philadelphia Eagles-New Orleans game, but a lot of impacts here on what's going to take place next week. And also, who covered, who didn't cover. Let's get right to it, Teddy. First game of the weekend last week, Chiefs 31-13 over the Colts. Chiefs coming in saying, you know what, Patrick Mahomes, rookie quarterback, how's he going to fare? And oh no, Teddy, snow all over the place. Totals dropping from 57 to 53.5. Let's talk a little bit about that football game, Teddy, and how good that I should say that, playoff first start quarterback Patrick Mahomes looked fine to me.
Yeah, I mean, what did we say last week? We're like all the first-year starters, and then there's Mahomes, and Mahomes has been the exception to every rule. Yep. In week one of the postseason, we saw the three first-time starters all go down. In week two of the postseason, we saw Patrick Mahomes be the exception to that rule. And I mean, the two teams from the AFC that got slapped, the Chargers got slapped around, the Colts got slapped around. Both those games were essentially over by halftime from a straight-up and ATS standpoint. You say, well, what happened to Indy? They were so good. Yeah, they were gassed. When you go back-to-backs on the road, when you go 5 and 7 weeks on the road without the break, like the Colts did, like the Chargers did, the two AFC bye teams were laying in wait for their opponents, and both Indy and LA looked a little bit gassed in their respective defeats. Certainly early on, they both got blitzed, and that was pretty ugly. If you had an Indy ticket in your pocket, you were never in that ball game. Under cashes with ease as well in the snowy conditions.
Yeah, how about that, Teddy? 57 for most of the week, and then, you get the whole TV ramp up there, snow on the field, which throughout the game, it actually didn't play that big of an impact overall in the game. I mean, sure, made for a little bit of muddy conditions there, but it's always interesting to see a 3.5 point drop on the game, on the day of the game. And certainly at the end, even though you're looking for a late touchdown by the Colts, there still wouldn't have been enough to get over that total. Kansas City in a complete rout and run away. The Saturday Night Football game, the Rams took care of business against the Dallas Cowboys. One of the things that we featured, Teddy, which I think you said right here, if you're going to cash that Rams ticket, you're probably going to cash that over ticket. Both of those worked well. I thought the Rams from start to finish were the most dominant team, even in the first half, Teddy, when it was a 7-3 game that the Dallas Cowboys had the lead. The only thing that wasn't going on was the Rams punching it in the end zone. After a while, they got it going. And again, game sneaks over the total with a last-minute touchdown on a questionable penalty, which, again, a lot of people on that total were cheering for.
Yeah, depending on which side of that total
exactly.
you had, you were either cheering for or not cheering for, as Dallas gets that final score off the questionable, was it a fourth down pass interference call that, as a Rams backer, I thought was a little bit dicey. All that being said, the Rams punted once against the Cowboys defense after the game. LA was talking about, we kind of knew what their defensive signals were, which is exactly what the Seahawks said earlier in the season. The Cowboys coaching staff has some answers, for sure, or some questions. It's Rod Marinelli in particular, I thought had a really rough game plan. Again, the Rams punted once, and the only time they punted in the game, I was ready to wring Sean McVay's neck at that moment. When they were up one score at the time. They were 4th and short in Dallas territory. The Rams don't punt in that spot, but they did there. It ended up working out in their favor after Dallas had to punt back. But Cowboys with the hot start, Rams pretty much dominant thereafter. That was a pretty one-sided game, despite the relatively close final score that shows even with that, the Rams 7.5. Not a great result for the house when they win by 8.
Yeah, certainly some questionable coaching decisions, but I can't get enough. C.J. Anderson, almost off the scrap heap now, looking just as good as Todd Gurley. A 1-2 punch moving forward should be interesting to watch. And a little bit later in the show, we go on the off-the-mic subject here about head coaching decisions. Obviously, that was an interesting one by Sean McVay because it wasn't even like they tried to draw them off sides and then came back. And I thought the declining of the penalty by Jason Garrett and that would have forced the Rams to actually go for it, but they didn't. But interesting, the Rams end up pulling ahead, nice third down conversion late in the football game to put put that one away. Patriots 41, Chargers 28. Teddy, when I first look at the score, I say, man, you know what? Chargers came to play. Absolutely not. It's almost like they were delayed, or maybe they were in a 3-hour time warp, figuring the kickoff was 3 hours later on Los Angeles time as opposed to what they showed up. A long drive to start the game to set the tone by the New England Patriots, continue to dump it out into the flat, inching forward 3-4 yard grips, and then all of a sudden, at the end of that drive, a flag comes out on a key third down. 2 plays later, the Patriots punch it in to go up 7-0 and never look back. I was actually surprised, because I turned the game off late fourth quarter with everything pretty much already wrapped up. I was surprised the Chargers actually got the 28 points to make it that close if it was an appearance to be close. But what a runaway by the Patriots. Completely impressive there. And that'll be interesting how this plays in the next week's game with the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, 35-3 at halftime after New England punches in their 5th TD. Again, didn't punch before the break, and the game was over by halftime. The only question in the second half was whether the Chargers were going to cover the second half number, which they did, and whether the game was going to go over the second half number, which it did on the Chargers' final touchdown. But again, when you see these teams in dismal travel spots, and the Chargers were very much in a dismal travel spot, coming off a huge win, coming off another huge win, et cetera, they were gassed. They played like it early, and the Patriots ran all over them. Belichick and Brady have a pretty good track record when it comes to playing postseason games with extra time to prepare, now making their 9th consecutive trip to the AFC Championship game, that's never going to happen again. That will never happen again, what New England's doing right now.
No, completely impressive. And also, Teddy, you're going to get that dichotomy next week of how good those Patriots look at home. But if you cross-reference it with the way they play on the road during the season, should be a fun matchup next week in Kansas City. Coming right down to the wire, looked like it was going to be a runaway early by the Philadelphia Eagles, up 14-0. Brandon Graham gets a strip sack fumble, but can't hold on to the ball. Even though after that, another series later, the Eagles again found themselves up 14-0 with the football about midfield. Nick Foles throws an interception, and the Saints just continued to salt that football game away. The Eagles couldn't make any plays on offense. Nick Foles comes up a little bit lame during that game, missing a numerous amount of wide-open wide receivers. But as always, we're gamblers, Teddy. It's 20-14. The Saints are driving. Looks like they're going to have about a 45, 46-yard field goal. Nice play by Michael Bennett, pushes it back to 52, and a wide right. And the Eagles are right back into it, but comes up with a late interception in there. The one thing I missed on this game, Teddy, I thought there would be more points. One of the wagers I did like is right out of the gate. I thought it was a good one. Eagles go up 14-0 with about 6 minutes to go in the first quarter. I was sitting on a 24.5 over ticket in the first half. Would ended up losing by a half point. But overall for the game, 34 total points, well under the 52 it closed at yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, after the first 2 touchdowns for Philadelphia, they didn't score again, obviously, the rest of the ball game. Let's give the Saints defense credit for A, making adjustments, and for B, getting to Nick Foles, and C, for intercepting the pass after it went through Alshon Jeffrey's hands at the end of the ball game, which was the difference maker. Jeffrey, obviously the GOAT today, even though he was playing with broken ribs and a gutty performance. But I thought the Eagles were coming down to win that ball game. I really did. After that missed field goal, and Bennett's going to get credit for the stuff on the third down. I thought the play call was inane, bottom line. Everyone knew exactly what the Saints were going to do that game, including Philadelphia. And with the strength of that Eagles defensive line, no surprise that the play turned out to be a dud that forced a 50-plus yard field goal attempt that ended up being the miss that ended up resulting in a Saints cover. Now, had that kick gone in, New Orleans would have probably played a different level of defense on that final drive, and the Eagles might have come in through the back door anyway. But the one play, based on the one play call, ended up having a huge impact. ATS. Saints backers don't get the money. Eagles backers cash again as underdogs, just like they've done in every previous playoff game that Nick Foles has been in over the past 2 seasons.
Nope, certainly impressive. Crushing blow for us here in the Delaware Valley. But as we move on, there's more games to look at. We'll get to those a little bit later in the show. That betting show, folks, if you haven't done so yet, give us a follow at SBR Sports Picks on Twitter. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Every time Teddy and I go live here on this show, you'll get that notification. Pop in and check it out. SBRodds.com. All your latest line moves. We'll get to a couple of those in just a few minutes. James Harden, Teddy. Hey, if we look at the box score there, man, drops 38 points, 16th straight time of 30 or more points. But I had to do a double take. I thought it was maybe an error coming across my ESPN ticker, Teddy. 1 for 17 from 3. Anytime something interesting like that pops up with such a great player, 1 for 17, It's one of those things where in the playground, like, hey, buddy, stop shooting the three-pointers out there. But an interesting note overall. But more importantly, the Magic pulled a big upset in this game as well.
Yeah, and a lot of it had to do with the fact that James Harden was 1 of 17 from a three-point line. I mean, Houston was 5.5-point road chalk over Orlando at tip-off. The Magic obviously getting the straight-up victory in large part because Harden, brick after brick after brick. And I know you got your guy. You let your guy shoot. You know, he'll find his rhythm. Didn't happen for Harden last night. I've never been a James Harden fan. I continue not to be a James Harden fan. I understand the guy can score points in bunches. Show me a ring, Harden. My over-under on his career rings, half, and I'll take the under.
I agree with you there. Talk a little bit of hot stove, Teddy. We talked a little bit on Friday, but some implications coming up over the weekend. 3 interesting scenarios here. Manny Machado looks like the White Sox have offered now an 8-year contract. For some reason, we have no idea what the money is. The Phillies contingent fly out to sunny Las Vegas and meet 5 hours with Bryce Harper, and they are the prohibitive favorites now to sign Harper, even though we don't even know if a contract offer was extended in that situation. And the final point here, trying to get Kyler Murray circled in. An interesting little, backdoor policy here for Major League Baseball. They can actually sweeten the pot on getting Kyler Murray in with the A's. Maybe his agent holds that leverage there. We saw this way back in the day with John Elway and the New York Yankees where he didn't want to go to the Baltimore Colts. Should we see another situation like this? Teddy, a little bit of hot stove talk here while we talk some football.
Sure. And look, the one that intrigues me the most of the 3, because we're going to hear rumors. I don't give a shit about rumors. Give me something I can bet on. Give me some facts. The issue with Murray and the A's is an interesting one here because Major League Baseball legitimately doesn't pay their minor leaguers a livable wage. Minor league players make like $2,000 a month. It's insane.
And they only play 3 months.
Kyler Murray saying, yeah, if you want to play me in the minor leagues, sweeten the pot a little bit so I can get some cash. Really, baseball as an entity should be paying these minor leaguers more. At some point that'll happen. I don't know if it'll come in the next collective bargaining agreement. But the Murray to the A's or to the NFL, it's interesting. We'll keep an eye on that one right here on That Betting Show.
That's right, Teddy, talking about those prop bets, which you always like to get after, seeing like when are they going to sign, both of us, I think, in agreements that it's probably going to come later than sooner. So always some interesting stuff here to talk. We'll let you guys know when they do sign, if they don't sign, or any more rumors that come around the mill here. NFL Conference Championship round line openers. The last weekend, we're going to have more than 2 teams play, Teddy, and certainly take that week off before the Super Bowl to ramp up, but lines are moving already. It looks like if we're taking a look out there, Rams and the Saints are going to be the early game on Sunday at 340, minus 3.5, 57. Money line coming in about minus 180, plus 155. Almost similar totals and also line bets here, Teddy, in each one of these games. The later game, the Patriots and the Chiefs, minus 3 of 57. Money line coming in about 155, plus 135. Interesting little things here that you want to take a look at. Obviously, the Dome, not going to have any weather impact on that one. But Kansas City looking like a high of under 20 degrees, maybe 15 degrees for that one. Now, we do see shifting weather quite a bit. Last week, early in the week, we were expecting snow in New England. Didn't happen. Weren't expecting much in Kansas City at the later in stages of the week. We got a nice little snowstorm, Teddy. Let's talk a little bit of championship week football here. Exciting one setting up, it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, there's 4 games left in the NFL season, and one of the 4 games is the Pro Bowl, which if you bet on, more power to you. Good luck finding an edge. I know guys that have, but it's not a game that I handicap. So for most bettors, there's 3 games left. There's not. That's what you normally see on a Thursday night, Sunday night, Monday night. It's not even like a regular NFL Sunday. There's not a ton more action in the NFL, but the action that we will have gets an inordinate amount of hype and an inordinate amount of betting volume. And certainly we're talking about these 2 games. None of the teams that played last weekend are still alive. It's 1 versus 2 and 1 versus 2. These are the 4 best teams in the NFL. They've been the 4 best teams in the NFL essentially all season. I don't think anyone is disappointed with these matchups. Now, when you look at the early money, there was a little bit of Patriots money off the get-go. Not much. It looks like this line is going to hold at 3. There were some 2.5 out there. I'm seeing some 3 even money at some spots now, but it looks like New England KC is going to hold 3. There's still 57.5s out there, but leading indicator books are at 57 with money to the under. So if you like the under in Patriots Chiefs, shop around now. I think you'll get a good number that may not be available later in the day. And when it comes to Rams-Saints, 3.5 really does look like the prevailing number. The sharp books showing a little bit of support for LA at 3.5. Could go down to 3. I'm not convinced that it gets there. Note the disparity in the two money lines. Patriots will always get their fair share of support. Of course, New England's been pretty darn good in the underdog role when they've had the opportunity. Patriots haven't been dogs, however, since like 2015? The last time they were dogs, if you haven't looked it up, Donnie, I'll give you $50 right now. You can name the last team that New England was a dog to.
I can't. I don't even. I wouldn't even know. Who is it?
It's going to blow your mind. The Buffalo Bills. Week 2, I think it was 2015. They were 2-point dogs at Buffalo.
My goodness, that's amazing when you talk about it. Also, Teddy, with these two championship game rounds, rematches from the season. The only thing that's going to flip is the Rams did play the Saints down in the Dome, but then obviously with the switching of Kansas City, they played, obviously, with the Patriots. Both pretty good games there. One got out to a big lead in the early one in the Saints game, if I remember, with the Rams closed the door, but then obviously a winner by the New Orleans Saints. Very entertaining game in that Chiefs-Patriot game. We'll see what works out here. But we'll keep an eye on these lines as they go in later in the week, as we did last week. Since there was 4 games, we broke them down each day. We'll wait a couple days before we really get into some of this steak and sizzle tonight. Teddy, watch what you bet. Not a lot going on out there. We are going to have a game down in Cameron Indoor. The Syracuse Orange are going to head down to take on the Duke Blue Devils. Heavy line here, Teddy. Duke favored by 17, over under 145.5 at the time of taping here. We didn't have a money line that was available in this one, and I'm not too sure if we were going to get one at around 17. Key injury information, Zion Williamson goes down on Saturday. Misses the second half for Florida State. Very interesting game there because Duke ended up pulling that one out. Highly intense game. Now you come home to face Syracuse. On paper, it looks like a lot of points, but when we break down some of these things, Teddy, Duke 8-0 at home, straight up, 6-2 against the spread. Average margin of winning by 35. And the Orange hang in here down in Cameron tonight, Teddy.
I'm seeing some money lines on this game. You can find plus 1,300 on Syracuse at South Point. You can find plus 1,200 at William Hill. So there are money lines on the Orange. So yeah, exactly. Or you can lay 2,400, 2,500 on Duke just to win the game. Certainly Zion Williamson, an impact injury. Duke did not cover at Florida State after he got hurt over the weekend. He's been upgraded to probable for tonight. And I know Syracuse has gotten the job done on the highway this year, but I also know they just lost to Georgia Tech pretty badly last year. 2 matchups against Duke. They lost. One was competitive in the big dance, 69-65. The regular season matchup wasn't competitive, 60-44. And both of those games, Syracuse's defense, that 2-3 matchup zone, gave Duke trouble. And Duke's size and defense gave Syracuse all kinds of trouble. This total, 145, 145.5, man, that looks high. To me, I don't see either team executing their offense effectively this evening.
Yeah, it should be interesting. Also, Syracuse, only 2 road games so far, but have 2 nice wins on those road games coming in Ohio State and Notre Dame. So it should be some interesting TV tonight, 7 p.m. on ESPN. Let's take it over to the association, Teddy. Spurs looking to bounce back at home for the Hornets. Reason we picked this game out, it is an NBA TV game, so it is a national game. But one of the more astounding things that I don't see too much here is when you look at the Hornets going on the road, 8-12 against the spread, you say, you know what, that's about for the norm. But the Spurs come in at home, Teddy, 8-5 straight up, but absolutely tearing it up, 17-6 against the spread at home. Taking a look at this basketball game, I know the Spurs are favored by 9, over under 223. Any angles we might be able to look at in this one, Teddy?
Well, I mean, this is a Charlotte team that's played bad basketball. They've lost 4 to 5 in their current road trip. 3 of the losses have been blowout fashion. This team hasn't beaten an opponent with a winning record since December. At home against Denver. They're 2-9 against the spread on the highway in their last 11 tries. All kinds of trouble for the squad when they go on the road or play good teams. They're not playing a lick of defense. They've allowed 119 points per game on 49% shooting on this road trip. I mean, right now, it's Kemba Walker and not much else. Oh, and by the way, Hornets haven't covered a point spread of +7 or higher all year. Spurs coming off a loss have been real good. Spurs dominant on this floor all season. You can certainly understand why there's been modest San Antonio money so far. I wouldn't be surprised if there's more before kickoff. Spurs, the clear choice for this bettor if I'm going to get involved in this ball game.
There you go. One NCAA game, one NBA game, Teddy. One of my favorite subjects here. I always love to play armchair quarterback. It's one of my favorite things to do here on the channels at sportsbookraview.com. And I'm going to play it a little bit right now. And I'm going to get down to the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, say what you want about the game. You know, they were injured. They were losing guys as they went. They're back down to their sixth-string cornerback that was signed, December 24th and doesn't know the plays, so therefore gives up 4th and 2 touchdowns to get the New Orleans Saints back into it. But I'm just looking at the final drive here. The Eagles get another miracle missed field goal. It wasn't a double doink, just a wide right, but you get the ball at the 42-yard line. A couple plays later, you get a couple completions out there. You get a personal foul, and you're lining up at the 25. Roughly 2:30 on the clock, Ted, I'm going to say, and I'm screaming in my living room. It's more important to run this clock down just as it is to score a touchdown at this point. And they called the perfect play call. They called Darren Sproles, Teddy, up the middle, which got no yards, and I was fine with because that gets you to the 2-minute warning. But instead, my father goes out to smoke a cigarette, figuring it's going to be the 2-minute warning. A couple of my guys head for the kitchen, about to get beers and drinks, and come back in. And all of a sudden, the screaming starts to entail, and it was primarily from me. At 2:01, the Philadelphia Eagles rushed up to the line of scrimmage to get a playoff. It was going to be a 5-yard play at best. Tipped interception, game over. Absolutely livid because you could have went to the 2-minute warning and ran the same exact play, not rushed. And if you got 5 yards, it would have been perfect because you would have bled the clock down. If you would have scored before the 2-minute warning or scored just out of it and gave those New Orleans Saints, Teddy, a minute and a half to go down the field to get a field goal, you would have lost. Clock management coming from the Andy Reid tree bites us again in Philadelphia. And boy, did it hurt me, Teddy. I screamed all the way through the rest of that game and on Twitter until I went to bed last night. I couldn't take it anymore.
Sure. When you're a fan, it's really hard. I want no part of being a fan. I've been a fan. It sucks for every team except for one every year where you just get your heart ripped out. All that being said, I mean, you want to talk there were plenty of coaching miscues this weekend. I can't think of a coach that did everything right this side of Belichick. McVay choked up too. But
yes,
Doug Peterson got a ton of credit for the Eagles' run last year to win the Super Bowl title. Doug Peterson is the brain. No, he wasn't. DeFilippo was the brains. Frank Reich was the brains in Philly. Peterson wasn't the brains, and that certainly showed. The one thing you can't do if you're Philadelphia, score the game-winning touchdown and leave enough time for Drew Brees to march the Saints back down the field to the field goal range. So I'm with you on the concept. No need to rush that play. They rushed it. Obviously, the end result cost them a lot. Brutal for Eagles fans. My condolences to you guys. I'm telling you, it's much more fun to be a bettor because when you're a bettor and your team loses, guess what? The next day, you wipe it clean. It's all good. If you're an Eagles fan and your team loses, guess what? The next 6 months suck as you wait for training camps to open in July.
And as we rehash this and get done filming, probably going to head to the bar and drown my sorrows in some Jack Daniels. But that's what this show is for. This is about to relive it, about to go forward with it. That Betting Show, the fastest 20 minutes here in sports betting, your one-stop shop for all your sports betting needs. We'll be back tomorrow going over some NCAA action, some NBA action, previewing those next weekend's games. Hope you guys enjoyed it here at That Betting Show. He's Teddy. I'm Donnie. We'll see you tomorrow.